In today's session, we're going to be talking about zero trust and in specific the Microsoft definition, right? So when we look at, the word zero trust, right? If we just take those two words and we break it down, zero means nothing and giving trust, right? So assuming you're trusting nothing, right? So that's really the essence of zero trust. And the Microsoft definition really, if we look at it, it is an approach, right? It's also a framework. And in specifically, when we look at in the context of say Azure, right, what do we need to do to say to ourselves that we're doing zero trust, right? So what we need to do is that first step that we're going to cover, right? So the first thing is verifying explicitly, making sure that you're authenticating and authorizing for everything, for all the data points, right? The second part is least privilege, giving the minimum amount of access needed to access that resource. So if a person needs to access something, don't give them access to everything, just the limited scope, only giving them access what they need to do in order to do their job, right? And also you can use, for example, specific Azure features, like for example, just in time access. So a virtual machine is up and running only during the time that the user needs access to it, as opposed to having it up running all the time, right? And then something else would be just enough access, would be just giving them only the amount of scope of access they need on that virtual machine. So those are just some examples of least privilege, right? And the next one is assume a breach, right? So design the network or design your environment assuming that if a breach was to happen, that you're minimizing the blast radius, essentially where it can spread to. And you can also limit it through using segmentation, right? Now, and these are essentially our principles on the zero trust aspects. The next stage is where it needs to be done. Where are we doing the zero trust, right? So we're really doing zero trust around identity, right? So around the users and the access, right? We're also doing endpoints, so all the traffic is actually flowing in and out of the endpoint. So we want to be doing zero trust there. We also want to be doing zero trust on the data, classifying it, labeling it, encrypting it, making sure things like the data loss protection tools are examining that so there's no data leakages. So we want to do zero trust there. We want to do it through API, so applications, and ensuring our APIs or are explicitly verified and only given access on terms of least privilege. And if it was to assume there was a breach, only one API or limited APIs may be impacted, right? Okay. The next aspect is doing zero trust around the infrastructure, and then finally the network, right? So the network, you can use network security devices, you can do segmentations, you can do VLANs, VPCs, and those kind of tools that we have available in the cloud, right? So if we look at all these elements, right, they're essentially the technology. So we're basically taking our principles, what we need to do, and we're basically applying it to where it needs to be done. And that's essentially zero trust, the Microsoft definition. Thank you.